This is Unemployable, the podcast for independent workers, freelancers, DAO contributors, and other self-employed folks who want to own their employment and become self-sovereign. We may work alone, but we can be unemployable together. This episode of Unemployable is brought to you by Opolis, providing healthcare benefits and payroll for the self-employed. Join the community at opolis.co. This episode of Unemployable is also supported by Opolis partner Darien Advisors, a human-centric crypto tax and advisory firm. Go to www.darienadvisors.io to book a free consultation. Mention Unemployable for a discount. 53% of Gen Z prefers freelance work over traditional corporate employment. With all that said, it's imperative that the independent workforce has the proper tools and platforms that help support and strengthen the movement. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Rafael Espinal, a former New York City council member who's on a mission to support and champion the rights of freelancers and independent workers as the president of the Freelancers Union. Also joined by John Paller, founder and executive steward of Opolis. Rafael Espinal, a pioneering political leader from Brooklyn, brings a wealth of experience from his time in the state office and as New York City council member. He's known for his innovative solutions to urban challenges, such as the establishment of the Office of Nightlife and initiatives addressing food policy and climate issues. As the current executive director of the Freelancers Union, Rafael has been instrumental in expanding the organization's reach and advocating for independent workers' rights. His leadership has led to the development of valuable resources and support networks for the growing freelance workforce, reinforcing his commitment to fair treatment and equal rights in the labor market. Rafael, welcome to Unemployable. I'd like to start by asking you about your personal journey and how did you get started supporting and advocating for freelancers and independent workers?
Well, thanks for having me, Josh. It truly is a pleasure to be on. I started my journey in politics really, growing up in Brooklyn, especially in a neighborhood that historically has gone underrepresented. In my opinion, has gone without a strong voice within the halls of government. I've seen firsthand of what can happen when you have communities that are disinvested in, not heard, and the impacts that has on this community. So when I ran for office, my main goals and what I wanted to accomplish was to really bring the voices of my community to the forefront. How do we address historical, socioeconomic issues that they've dealt with, given the lack of representation that the community has experienced over the years, and it's really what guided what was my moral compass when I was doing my work. And I immediately learned, someone who didn't have a political background or even governmental legislative background. What I quickly learned is that government, of course, anyone can agree, works very slowly. But also government is very reactive, right? It's not really thinking ahead of how to deal with issues. And I quickly learned that there's a lack in representation that's thinking about the issues of tomorrow. And it's really what helped me, I think, one, respect the work the Freelancers Union was doing, because they were advocating for a workforce that has gone underrepresented, that didn't have a voice. And two, they were thinking about how do we shape the future of work. And it kind of really tied into what I was passionate about in terms of my community that I grew up in, to a community that I felt were facing similar challenges and issues for those reasons.
Your career journey is quite remarkable, Rafael. Could you share how your background in the state office and as a New York City council member prepared you for your current role leading the Freelancers Union?
Absolutely. I mean, my work in government has given me the background I think that I needed when I took over the Freelancers Union, especially during the pandemic. When I took on the role as executive director, it was March 2nd of 2020. It was about 2 weeks before government mandated shutdowns have taken over, especially here in New York City. And immediately my mind went into overdrive, and I started thinking of how do I tap into my skills of crisis management, my skills of raising the voices of a community that has gone underrepresented for a long time. I really start thinking about how do I use my experience to uplift the voices of freelancers who I believe have been voiceless throughout the history of independent work. And the pandemic was really that turning point for me because I was able to turn on, I was able to, sorry, this is one of those points where I lost my train of thought, but I was able to go on all cylinders and really think about how do I create a support system for freelancers who I knew were going to go without a paycheck, who were going to go without income, when work began to dry up because of these government mandated shutdowns, and because they didn't have access to the basic benefits that traditional employees have had. For example, unemployment insurance, right, paid leave. And we did two things. One, of course, was advocate directly to Senator Chuck Schumer and Congress about the need to include independent workers in any sort of relief packages that were released at the time. When we think about the CARES Act, which created the pandemic unemployment assistance, right? We advocated for that assistance to include independent workers, giving independent workers for the first time in this country's history access to unemployment insurance benefits. Two, we had the paycheck protection loans that were released, were initially were talked about being targeted towards your traditional brick and mortar businesses and corporations. We advocated to ensure that the micro business and the independent worker were able to tap into those funds and also were put in front of the line when those applications opened. And then, lastly, we as an organization work with the private market to create a fund called the Freelancers Relief Fund, because we knew that the immediate need was getting cash in the hands of independent workers, and we were able to do that immediately. And we were giving folks cash grants up to $500 to help them get through that phase in which all of these systems that were being put in place, like the pandemic unemployment insurance, give them the dollars they needed to get through that time. So it's funny. The dots did connect from my time in government to my switch to the union, but I would say that my experience understanding how to manage crises has really put me in the right place at the right time, especially for a workforce that has gone underrepresented and has been in need for a very long time.
You may not have started as a politician, but that was you impressively answered my next three questions. That was really well done. So I'm just going to fold in John here real quick so that we kick off our conversation. John, for those who may not be familiar with Opolis, could you provide a brief introduction to the organization and what unique offerings Opolis provides to independent workers?
Yeah, sure. So not dissimilar from Rafael, my experience has been that freelancers or just people working independently don't get a lot of attention or resources thrown their direction to support their journeys and kind of how they want to frame them. So having been a part of the employment systems framework for over 20 years, I've had a front row seat to seeing a bunch of things that kind of didn't work, in my opinion. And so what we did is we built a platform, and it's a cooperative. So we call it a digital employment cooperative. For simplicity, you could think about it like REI for employment. So when you become a member, you actually become an owner, and you're accessing then the shared services of employment that you would experience at a large Fortune 500 company. So you have accounting support, you get your payroll, you get all of your group healthcare benefits, you get everything that you would normally get at a traditional job, but you're still independent. So you get all the upside and support systems that aren't normally present for independent workers without actually having to give up your independence. So Opolis is a fully integrated employment platform providing payroll, benefits, resources, support, healthcare, and alike to the independent worker.
So it sounds like there's much room for collaboration here, which is
Yeah, well, I'll give a little background on that. So, I've known of the Freelancers Union for as long as I can remember, and I was introduced to Sarah Horowitz, the founder, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. And, she had just such an interesting story about why the Freelancers Union was created to begin with. And it very much aligns with what Rafael has talked about, and just underrepresented workers, a large cohort of them being independent, sort of choosing their own adventure, I suppose you could say. And when you look at the game incentives of the system doesn't actually really want people to work independently. They don't say that. That's the quiet part I just said out loud. But and there's a bunch of reasons for that. And I don't want to get into the guts of it unless you want to, Josh. But it's always intrigued me because ever since I started talking about the concept of democratized employment in 2005, I had sort of a moral epiphany, I guess you could say, around how people are treated when it comes to their employment, when they're temporary workers, independent, they're second-class citizens. I mean, they're not really, the systems don't even exist to get the same support and services. You can't even do it. So it's not like, well, you just kind of have to do it on your own. Like, you don't really even get to participate. So there's disincentives, I guess you could say, or big downsides to being independent. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. When you look at vibrancy and productivity and creativity and innovation, this comes from being independent and taking risks, and we should be encouraging those things, not discouraging them. So, yeah, I think collaborations are really big with the reputation and history and legacy of Freelancers Union being such a stalwart in support of the independent worker. There's no more natural partnership for us than Freelancers Union, because we really, what's funny is when Rafael and I first had a chat, I'm sure he goes into these conversations skeptical because everybody and their dog wants to talk to their team. But we're just yeah, this makes a lot of sense. We really see the world from the, very similar lens that gives us alignment in our goals. And we happen to have an integrated tool set that fits very well with the constituency that they've got in their membership. And it fits well for us as well, because, our members also value what Freelancers Union values. So, there's been a lot of cross-pollination going on there, and we foresee a lot more to come.
So I'd like to get into kind of like the quick pitch of, we've got a lot of freelancers that watch this show. Let's walk them through the journey of membership in Freelancers Union and in Opolis, and how from invoicing clients through being able to pay rent or get a mortgage, from start to finish. Let's go through there.
Do you want to start, Rafael? Go ahead.
Through the journey of becoming a freelancer and the process they have to go through.
Yeah. So what he's talking about is how can we help as resources? And so, I'll start by kind of referencing your guys' library of knowledge.
Yeah. Well, most definitely. I mean, I would say this. I mean, if you're someone who's first starting out as a freelancer, of course, you're approaching this with the idea that you have the skills you need to be able to build your business and offer clients a product, right? But through that journey, there is a huge administrative aspect of it that might not tie to your knowledge of your profession and of your business, right? So it's all these important things. We've learned from our membership that just about 25% of freelancers always use a contract every time they work with a client. Every time
is it really that low? 25%?
25%. Which means you have 75% of freelancers who are going into a relationship with a client in which they're not protected. And what that means that they may not get paid on time, or they may not even get paid at all. And even if they go through the small claims court process that currently exists to collect on those overdue funds, they don't have the proof to show to the judge that they're actually owed this money for the work that they completed, right? So you also, at the end of that journey, after you've had hopefully a successful year as a freelancer, you got to do your taxes, right? And you have to collect your 1099s and make sure you're reporting everything correctly, all of your expenses, all of your income. One, you want to report all of your expenses because you want to make the best out of all of the tax benefits that come with that. You want to report all of your income because you don't want the IRS knocking on your door saying you owed X amount of money in taxes, which then turns into fines down the line, right? And through that journey, you also have to start thinking about yourself, right? How do I ensure that I can see a doctor if I get sick? How can I take time off to care for a family member? How do I get proof of income? One thing we've learned is that there's a lot of landlords and building management companies that find it that give freelancers a difficult time and helping them secure an apartment because they don't have like a proof of income from an employer. So there are a lot of these aspects, right? That I believe Opolis is able to come in and help provide a support system for those freelancers, right? At the end of the day, but what we do internally is try to build these strong partnerships with companies like Opolis. Try to compile all the information you need to ensure you have the tools you need to succeed, and be truly a support system for you. We want to make sure that when you come to the Freelancers Union, that you have the runway you need to be a successful freelancer at the end of the day.
What I've always appreciated about Freelancers Union is, as long as you guys have been around, you've never wavered from like what I call the benevolence factor, and actually being able to provide these resources to people in a way that's easy to understand, that isn't, tainted with a bunch of salesmanship or trying to get it. It's not like a bait and switch. You guys don't ever do anything like that. And so I think that knowledge is really where it starts, Josh. And I think, one of the things I'm most looking forward to is our next chapter of partnership, where we really take knowledge and the communication of this knowledge to the next level through new mediums of video and other experiential applications and other things that like really help people get, close this education gap. I think the most interesting thing that I've seen, I think to your point, Rafael, I think this underscores or at least illustrates it. 25% of people are using a contract. I don't know the exact number, but I would probably venture to bet that the number is pretty similar around those that actually incorporate, right? That actually get an LLC or some other entity to protect them. I mean, forget business insurance, forget accounting best practices, forget tax payments, forget all of these things. When you're let's say you're a marketing creative, let's say you're a software developer, let's say you're a massage therapist, how many of these independent workers actually know what best practices are in running a small business? They don't. Like they went to school to be a massage therapist, not a business manager, right? So that's like an MBA that you've got to have. So if you look at the comparison in like when you work at a big company, all of that apparatus is built around you. They call that the shared services apparatus, right? So you've got accounting and legal and taxes and paychecks and compliance and all these things that happen. Well, so I'll pivot from that statement to talking about, to answering your question, Josh, about how it works in the Opolis framework. So let's say you're a freelancer union member, and you're one of these guys that, or gals, or people that have not incorporated and don't have contracts and things like that. Let's say you're one of those folks. Okay. So you run into Opolis because, let's say right now, this time of year, being open enrollment, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later, Josh. I'm looking for healthcare insurance for my family because the state exchange program that I was on this year jacked my rates 25%. Right. And I'm like, so I'm going to go shopping and I'm going to look around. Well, Freelancers Union sends me an email saying, hey, look, check out this new partnership that we have with Opolis. It's a employment in a box for independent workers, dedicated to employment or to employing independent workers only. And it's a community-owned, member-owned thing, just like Freelancers Union kind of deals. So like, that's cool. I like this. And then you go find that health insurance is much less expensive than what you were finding on the state exchanges, and it's actually better coverage. And living in New York, state exchange rates are, my understanding is they just ballooned a bunch with, just inflation and everything happening. So then I go through a process of, the first step is I've got to incorporate myself. So we have a tool inside of the system that actually will help what we call professionalize your business. So this is getting what we call an EIN. That's an employer identification number. So for freelancers who aren't using contracts and aren't using organizations, this is the first place to start. So then we'll help you facilitate that process. It's pretty inexpensive. We've actually negotiated prices with all of our partners to make sure that they're very low and affordable for people. Depending on where you decide to incorporate, there might be ongoing annual fees for what they call registered agent, which is if you don't have a physical presence in another state in which you are incorporated, you have to have a physical presence, which there are people that you can pay to do that. It's usually a couple $100 a year. And from there, now you have an entity that has an employer identification number and can employ people. From there, you're going to set up your payroll. So in order to have that proof of income that Rafael was talking about, you've got to have a regular paycheck. Now, the question here is, well, who's paying the regular paycheck, right? Well, you are. You're going to pay yourself. And this paycheck is going to come twice a month on the first and third Fridays. And you're going to determine how much you pay yourself. Now, one tip here, pro tip, if you're billing through your organization, let's say $150,000 a year, and it could be all year, it could be super spiky, it doesn't matter. You can pick less of a number to actually pay yourself as a paycheck. You don't have to pay yourself the entire 150K. So that to your business is called revenue, and to you is called income. Now, when it passes through as a paycheck, so your business earns revenue, and then you actually pay yourself income. So if I pay myself, let's say 80,000 out of the 160, I can do that so long as it meets the test of a quote reasonable wage by IRS standards, which for your profession may vary, but most of the time, if you're paying yourself, even marginally above the minimum in your state in which you live. In New York, I think it's what, Josh, Rafael, do you know the minimum FLSA exempt
70.
wage? 70K? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you're paying yourself above 70K, then, nobody's going to really probably say much to you in most cases. And there you go. So you're going to set your payroll. Now, when it comes to invoicing your clients, we also have tools through Zero Software and a few other partners that you can have a set of books for your business, which is best practice. You can hook up a bank account that's exclusive to your business, which is also best practice. And you can run all of these transactions through your account and they automatically track, right? So they'll track through the system. So as you're processing your payroll, invoicing clients, receiving monies, like all of those things can be automated in modern softwares that are used via browser. And it's pretty nice. Okay. So that way you've got your business happening, things are being collected, and then you can pay yourself on a regular basis. Now, we get a question often about what happens if I'm, not working at the moment? What happens? Like, am I protected, or how do I pay myself if I don't have any money? Well, here's the trick. It's still up to you to manage your cash flow. But remember what I said about 160,000 a year in billings, in revenue, but we're only paying ourselves 80. When you do that, you usually have a rainy day fund. If you pay yourself all the money that you get right away, then you don't have a rainy day fund. It's always best practice to manage your cash flow by having that rainy day fund. So when you have that month off in between gigs or between contracts or whatever you want to call it, you can just continue to pay yourself and you don't lose your employment. In fact, you might be off contract, your business might not be billing, but you actually are still employed. It's really pretty cool. So now, who's my employer? Well, the community is technically legally your employer. So we call that the employer of record in the legal speak compliance world. So the employer of record has the responsibility to file what's called 941s, do federal tax remittances, provide the benefits, administer the benefits, and all that. So who's that? Who's the guys behind the curtain? The guys behind the curtain are just like you. They're just freelancers working on a business that is owned by its members, like REI, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that it's member owned. Okay, so we're all here providing shared services, group healthcare, benefits, proof of income, these things that our members need in order to function in the life that they choose. So the adventure that they chose might be a whole bunch of different things, but we don't care where anybody works from, with whom, and how much they work. We're here to provide the tools, resources, and support necessary so they can actually live effectively with the choices that they've made. And that when it comes to taxes and checking the compliance boxes and all the boring, what I call necessary evils of employment, you don't have to be an expert with this stuff anymore, because just like the big corporations who do it for you, now Opolis will do it for you, and you're part of the success, though, in the end.
So all of this sounds pretty great. If I was to take the stack of Freelancers Union and Opolis together as a freelancer, how much is this going to cost me?
Well, I can't speak for Rafael, but last I knew, it's free to join Freelancers Union.
Yeah, it's free to join on our end for sure. You
Yeah.
go on our website, freelancersunion.org. You can set up an account that puts you directly in touch with our team, gets you on our national newsletter, opens you up to benefits like all of the educational documents we have, to discounts with products that we have partnerships with. And then also, if you live in New York City, you'll be lucky enough to be able to work for free at our co-working hub, which is in Brooklyn, New York. But again,
sign me up.
Free to join with us. And then the partnership we have with Opolis, I'm sure John can speak to. But again, it's a partnership that at the end of the day was baked in with the idea of ensuring that freelancers have the tools they need to succeed.
Yeah. So I talk about cost a little bit differently with freelancers than I do, sort of enterprise folks, because freelancers are just regular people living their lives, and it's about the net, right? So the biggest thing that I'll showcase is our savings on healthcare. In states like California and New York, which obviously have the densest population in the country, it's not uncommon for us to see people, especially with family plans, saving up to 40%. I mean, the amount of money that people are spending on family plans in large states, especially if they're high earners, because I don't know, there's a little known fact, but the state exchanges underwrite you based in part on income and age. So if you're in your mid 50s and you make $250,000 a year, you're paid a lot, especially if you've got a family plan. So it all depends. Every situation is different. So this is not a blanket thing that I'm saying. But to give some context to that, there's a particular freelancer that we know who's a member who in California, mid-50s, couple of teenage daughters and a husband, a family plan, paying almost $5,000 a month for healthcare insurance through the state. Now it's about $2,000. So net, we're saving her about $30-something thousand a year in pre-tax money. Post-tax, it's easily $25,000. So no brainer on that front. Now you add then what's the cost? What's the catch? Well, there is no catch really. It's $20 to join, and that's mostly just a checkbox thing for compliance. It's a one-time thing. And then any other fees that exist are based on payroll processing. Now, any other service in the country is going to charge you more than we're charging, but we charge 1% of the aggregate processing. So if you process $100,000 a year in total benefits, payroll, taxes, everything, you're going to pay $1,000 a year, which is about $50 a paycheck. So it costs about $50 a paycheck, but when you net that off of savings and discounts and other things that you're getting through other products and services, you're actually saving money. Usually, most people are saving money. If at worst, we usually see sort of a wash for people. It doesn't really cost you anything else. Now, there's the implied costs or the environmental costs of not doing your taxes right or not doing compliance right or not maybe losing some money because you don't have a good contract. We can also help with those things. There's a lot of other potential costs out there, like even opportunity costs and the time value of money. Just time.
We don't have to go that far down the rabbit hole.
We don't. There's a lot of things that basically, though, Opolis creates efficiencies for that help you avoid other costs that might exist down the road somewhere.
Okay. So I've been a member of both for a while. You're right, I haven't paid dues to the Freelancers Union, but for most unions, you do pay dues, or at least when I think of a union, I think of paying dues. So what does your model look like, and why don't I pay dues?
Yeah, well, at our core, we are a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to be a space in which we are educating and advocating and creating community for the independent workforce in order for them to thrive. So charging membership was never really baked into our model and how we're going to approach our work. But at the end of the day, the way that our members are able to support the organization is threefold. One, of course, you can make a basic donation as you were making to any nonprofit that is tax deductible. But two is really about really into you as a freelancer really interacting with the partnerships we have been able to build for you and the system we have been able to build for you. Once you decide to purchase through our group insurance plans or decide to use systems like Opolis, the organization receives a commission that goes back into our advocacy and educational work. So it's really like a mutual, I like to think about it as like a mutualist kind of organization, because our work is only able to work if our members are engaged with what we are doing. And
can I say something about this? I really appreciate the intentionality around maintaining benevolence here. I really do. I mean, I Josh mentioned that most unions pay or charge a lot of dues, right, to be a member. And when you look at the value that gets created on the flip side of those dues, there's a tension, and there's a lot of corruption that happens in unions. And if you think about the game incentives, it's all about that revenue, right? You got to keep the member, you got to force people in. Like you see forced jurisdictional union membership. You see all these things that like people don't have a choice. They have to pay all this money to these people that don't provide any value. And what I really think is admirable about the work that you guys do and how you've set it up is that mutualistic dynamic. I think it's remarkable. It's such a good example of a well-designed thing, because you're not receiving revenue until there's value created, right? And I just think that's fantastic. So I'm sorry to interject, but like that it just, I think it matters a lot to point that out.
Definitely. And we do work with a lot of labor unions in partnership to get a lot of our work done. So I don't want to discredit too much of the work they're doing, because
they do a lot. They do a lot of good work. I think though that there's some flaws in the design that I think you guys have a much more sustainable design. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, appreciate it.
So looking forward to 2024 and beyond, what are some of the initiatives that, and this question's for Rafael, but John too, what are some of the initiatives that we're looking forward to? How can I, as a member of the union, support and I think you've got like the Freelancers Hub and Spark chapters, and I imagine there are others you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really, I don't want to say back to what I said before, but anyways, I think some ways you can get involved as a member is definitely by being engaged to the information we're putting out there, right? Of course, a lot of it is designed to give you the tools you need to succeed, but some of it is also ways you can get engaged in the advocacy work we're doing, right? We have about 2 or 3 policy goals that we're really focused on right now. For example, one of them is called the Freelancers and Free Act, which creates a regulatory structure that ensures you get paid within 30 days, that you have the right to a contract and protection from retaliation from a client if you request those 2 things. And fourth, if you do encounter a situation in which a client is late on an invoice or doesn't pay you at all, you now have the city or the state that you're living in being able to step in and push that client to pay you on time. And that is a law that's currently now exists in the city of New York.
Wow. Just
most recently, the state of New York, just a few months ago, the state of Illinois signed that bill into law, and also the city of LA. So we have a lot more work to do to get it across the nation. But that is the work we're doing on your behalf. So every time we approach local elected leaders, it helps to have members engage in those conversations, understanding the process so that they can use their own voice to reach out to the local elected officials to support those bills. 2, of course, is the monthly meetup groups that we host around the country. It's a great way for you to get connected to local independent workers that are doing similar work to what you're doing or might be helpful along your own journey. And then 3, of course, is just reaching out to us, and engaging with what we're putting out there in terms of products. We're doing this work of curating these partnerships to ensure that if you decide to create an LLC, that you're working with a company that you're going to get the best deal on. If you decide to file your taxes at the end of the year, you're working with a reputable tax company that you're going to get your best deal on, and to have the needs of the independent workforce in mind. So we encourage you. Yes, it's free to join, but there's only value if you use us. It's like a gym membership, right? You can pay $35 a month, but if you're not going to the gym, you're not going to build any muscle. So we encourage you to come knock on our door and have your voice heard.
Great. John?
You're going to ask me a question, or what's the question?
Oh yeah, same question. If there's
what am I
anything
looking
on the horizon
to?
for 2024, any like initiatives to?
Yeah, well, I mean, what we focus on, I really admire Rafael's and work politically, because it's such hard work, and he's obviously done this as a councilman for years and years, but the advocacy for freelancers in the political sphere is very important work. So I'll just say thank you for doing that. On our side, we focus on product a lot and trying to focus on innovation through building tools that people want to use. So what we're focused on over the next couple of years is full integration into a single tool set. So imagine a world where this situation that Rafael's talking about, where getting an invoice paid is really difficult, right? Because you've got a client who's not paying you for whatever reason. They're just not communicating, and the check's in the mail. My dog ate my homework, kind of stuff. And they do this because you don't have any power, right? I mean, they don't say this out loud, but
Would you have to go to court?
Sometimes, yeah, you got to go to small claims even a lot of times, which is a brutal process, because small claims is so rapid fire that if you don't have documentation, if you don't have good evidence, they'll just dismiss it, because they're like, look, you didn't do your work. What do you want what do you want from us? It's really hard to adjudicate these things. So what if as part of the Opolis stack, there was there's a thing in the employment world called vendor management systems, which is where the payments are made to various suppliers by a centralized system. What if Opolis replaced that system for independent workers, where you could plug into Opolis as your billing system, and your bills are paid to you through that system? What if Opolis became this big powerhouse of a billing, payments, and collection service on behalf of freelancers, in addition to doing the employment and payroll and proof of income and benefits and all that? So what I'm highlighting here is sort of the vertical integration of the supply chain of being independent, right? So into the tool set. So whether it's finding work, which was also on the roadmap, I wouldn't call them job boards, but call them next generation marketplaces where you can find work without bullshit and without fees. You can find groups of like-minded people to actually collaborate and work on things together, all the way then through engaging your client, contracts automated into a system that handles your procurement, into the work execution where the billings go out, and then into the paychecks at the back end, then to tax preparation. So we're all the concepts that Rafael's talked about, we're talking about productizing them into a vertically integrated stack. So right now we're very much on the employment, payroll, benefits, but really taking it to the next level. That's where we're looking at things in the next couple of years.
Cool. I'm imagining a future where we're harnessing the power of the 55 to 90 million freelancers.
Well, think about it this way. There's a concept in VC called fragmentation, right? They love talking about fragmented markets and looking for consolidation opportunities. And what this is not a consolidation of control per se. This is a consolidation of voice. And using the power of 90 million freelancers by the time 2028 rolls around to be able to actually effectuate change and really facilitate healthier outcomes from a commercial standpoint. That's really powerful. In fact, the largest employer in the US right now, fragmented, is the US labor market, is like a couple, maybe a couple million people. I think it's like Walmart or something like that. From a staffing company standpoint, it's like Kelly, I think, is like 1.5 million. It's not very big. Look at how many people are in the labor force. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of people. And there's a lot that just sort of dabble, and who knows what the actual full number is, but there's 340 million people in the country and growing. So what's that going to look? What would happen if we actually were able to consolidate this voice into a public utility infrastructure for employment? Well, you're looking at the world's largest employers, which you're looking at, but it's not constituted of, this top-down command and control, paternalistic, extractive mechanism that's only there to serve its shareholders, right? It's literally a public utility infrastructure that's serving independent workers in a way they couldn't do on their own, but in an aggregated sense. Think about the power of that voice. I mean, I think it's unprecedented in potential on what it could actually do. And these, situations where the freelancers kind of picked on, that's not going to happen anymore. Yeah. That dynamic's going to change.
Independent workers of the world unite.
I agree. I mean, I think it's very important to not underestimate the potential of that power, and also to wield it fairly. I think mutualism is a really important part of healthy growth and commercial vibrancy and GDP and just productivity. So I think managing benevolence at its core to its members, but also looking for reciprocity and relationship between labor and capital. I think labor understands that it depends on capital to survive. I think it understands that, but it shouldn't be just subservient. It shouldn't be a one-way street. We've heard all sorts of quotes over the years of, well, you got to remember, you work for the company. They don't work for you. You better do what they want. Yeah, okay. That sort of attitude's a little bit antiquated nowadays. It might be true factually, but relationally, there used to be a whole healthy dose of trust and loyalty that underpin the social contract of employment. That doesn't exist anymore. So what social contract do we have? Just we've commoditized labor essentially. We have. So we've gotten away from the human side, which is that mutualism. It's that reciprocity. So I think most independent workers would agree that we're not looking to demonize the people with money, the capital, the employers. We just want a more mutualistic fair shake. And I think that's the end game, that we can create a system-wide mutualistic relationship for employment through this public utility framework that we've built at scale, because it's only powerful when it becomes big. Now, what's big? I don't know. A few 100,000 would sound pretty good to me, at this point, but I envision this could grow literally to millions. And I envision it will, actually. And, my interest aside, I think there's just enough reason for that to happen that's pent up. All this legislative work, all the ground and pound work, all the yelling and screaming and fighting over these things, it doesn't seem that necessary to me if we had a better system that could actually protect these things inherently, right? Because of the power of the voice, right? Because right now, independent workers have no voice. Even all the work that we've done, 20 years of this stuff, fighting for this, it's just now that we're actually seeing the wheels really start to move on it, in a meaningful way. I think there's been wins here and there. We've sort of inched our way, but I think there's a tidal wave coming, and it's going to be, in part to a lot of different efforts, Freelancers Union being a big one of them, and Opolis being another one. And I think together it makes it even more powerful.
John, Rafael, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us today and share your valuable insights. Our listeners have learned so much about how they can leverage platforms like Opolis and Freelancers Union to thrive in the freelancing economy. Your expertise has illuminated the many opportunities available for independent workers. Before we wrap today's show up, I'd love if each of you could share any calls to action or resources you'd recommend for our listeners who are eager to learn more about your organizations and what you're doing. John, perhaps you could start by pointing our audience to where they could find out more about the services Opolis provides.
Yeah, open enrollment. This is the time of year that everyone's looking at their healthcare choices. They're evaluating what they're going to do for themselves and their families. Everyone's holding their nose at the price increases that have come through the state exchanges and everywhere else for that matter. We've been able to work a situation where we've got a new offering that we've been able to keep our value plans exactly the same in cost as they were this year. And our premium plans are still available, and we were able to mitigate the price increases to under double digits. So like pretty amazing stuff when you talk about renewals and all these things that go on under the hood. It's really difficult to do. But check out opolis.co, go to freelancersunion.org. You can find us there as well. If you're a Freelancers Union member, go to Freelancers Union first and click through to Opolis, because that will make sure that Freelancers Union gets credit for your referral. It's important that we support the Freelancers Union cause, so we want to make sure that they get all of the credit for what they're doing. And and then from there, we have membership stewards who are able to help you with your onboarding process. We're actually in the process of putting together an AI chatbot who can talk to you and answer your questions with all the, the things that people need to know. And there's a lot of them, and they're different for everyone. We're going to put together a chatbot to answer all of those things through using very cutting edge AI technologies. That's out soon. But for the short term, freelancersunion.org. Find the Opolis link, come check us out, and talk to us about joining. It's definitely not a decision you'll regret.
Is the AI chatbot going to have my face?
You know what? We could do that, Josh. We'll see. We'll see what we come up with.
There's the one more thing that I'd want to add to your answer, John, is that there's no waiting period. I don't think we talked about this. A lot of new employers will give you like a 30 or 90-day waiting period, or the exchange will make you wait another month if you miss a deadline. I think if you sign up by Christmas, you can get your health insurance started January 1st.
You can. So if you join now, it always starts at the first of the full month in which you start, right? So January 1, for anybody in December coming in, January 1's the date. And that'll give you coverage for the whole year. But there are no waiting periods. Even if you decide to wait till January 10th or something, like, my state doesn't make me do it until mid-January, you can still join and you can still start February 1. So there's no 60-day waiting periods. There's no any of those games. Those are insurance games that people play, try to minimize cost, and it's a budget management thing. But because our members pay for their healthcare insurance, we don't play any of those games. We just give you the coverage, right? You pay for it, you get it. And, we're self-insured, so we do have to manage the pool, and we have to make sure everybody's, playing well in the pool. But so far we've been able to do that pretty well. We have a great membership, and a very conscientious one. And we'd love to have you join.
And then, Rafael, we'd love to hear about any resources or tools offered by the Freelancers Union that our listeners should take advantage of. Also, if there's any upcoming events or initiatives you'd like to highlight, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are at the end of the year, but we do have a lot of events that we host for our members to be able to get access to educational resources, connect them to other fellow like-minded freelancers who are doing similar work. So if you go on our website, if you go to freelancersunion.org/hub, you'll see all of our upcoming events that are designed for you. But really, I just encourage anyone and everyone who's listening in, if you're an independent worker, become part of the organization. Your voice matters, and the more voices we get consolidated under our umbrella, the stronger our needs will be heard by those decision makers, but also those out in the private market who are thinking about creating products to serve you. So become a member. We're here to support you, and looking forward to hearing your concerns.
And if you are a Freelancers Union member who is a developer, front end, back end, designer, any kind of development, there's a really good hackathon that's coming up at the end of February, ETH Denver. Highly recommend you come and hack. There are a lot of great prizes that you can win. Showcase your talents. You can go to ethdenver.summon.xyz to apply. Tickets are really expensive. John, how expensive are ETH tickets?
They're free.
They are free. They are always free. There's a nice little theme we have here in the Freelancers Union.
That's right. That's right.
Again, thank you both so much for sharing your knowledge and passion and for supporting the freelance community, of which I'm one. We look forward to seeing the continued impact of your work. As always, to the Unemployable community, I'd love to hear your reactions and thoughts to the episode. You can tweet at the show at Opolis with the hashtag UnemployablePod. At Unemployable, I'll always be looking ahead to see what's on the horizon and bringing you top strategies for thriving in the new economy with freedom, flexibility, and peace of mind. I hope you got a lot out of this episode and the platforms that are empowering the independent workforce. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast player. Your ratings and reviews help other unemployables find the show. Until next time, I'm your host, Joshua Lapidus, a founding steward of Opolis, co-founder of SporkDAO, chronic freelancer, and tenured professor here at Unemployable University.